Our reading today is taken from Acts chapter 2, verse 14, and then from 22 to 32. Peter explains what has happened. But Peter stood up with the 11, raised his voice and addressed them. Fellow Jews, and all you who live in Jerusalem, mark this and give me a hearing. Men of Israel, listen to me. I speak of Jesus of Nazareth, a man singled out by God and made known to you through miracles, portents and signs, which God worked among you through him, as you well know. When he had been given up to you by the deliberate will and plan of God, you used heathen men to crucify and kill him. But God raised him to life again, setting him free from the pangs of death, because it could not be that death should keep him in its grip. For David says of him, I foresaw the presence of the Lord would be with me always, for he is at my right hand, so that I may not be shaken. Therefore my heart was glad, and my tongue spoke my joy. Moreover, my flesh shall dwell in hope, for thou wilt not abandon my soul to death, nor let thy loyal servant suffer corruption. Thou hast shown me the ways of life. Thou wilt fill me with gladness by thy presence. Let me tell you plainly, my friends, that the patriarch David died and was buried, and his tomb is here to this very day. It is clear, therefore, that he spoke as a prophet who knew that God had sworn to him that one of his own direct descendants should sit on his throne. And when he said he was not abandoned to death, and his flesh never suffered corruption, he spoke with foreknowledge of the resurrection of the Messiah. The Jesus we speak of has been raised by God, as we can all bear witness. Thanks be to God for the reading of his word.
Here is a daily quarantine questionnaire, a set of 6 questions you can ask yourself as a kind of checklist for every day during lockdown. Now, I found this on a Facebook feed I follow called The Contemplative Monk, and there are 6 questions that you can ask. Question number 1, what am I grateful for today? Number 2, who am I checking in on or connecting with today? Question number 3, what expectations of normal am I letting go of today? Question number 4, how am I getting outside today? Question number 5, how am I moving my body today? And question number 6, what beauty am I creating, cultivating, or inviting today? It was particularly this second last question about how I'm moving my body today, which got us thinking. And now our whole family is trying to keep fit during the lockdown, which I have to say is no small thing, because it turns out we're really unfit, or at least I am anyway. So I'm moving my body by climbing the stairs. My daughter found this challenge online where you can climb some of the great mountains of the world or simulate it at least, by climbing your stairs at home. So at the moment, I'm climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and I still have another 46 ascents to make today. Here we go. I wonder if there are habits that you're practicing too during this lockdown, things that you're doing to keep your mind and your body in shape so that you're ready to go when the lockdown is finished. Maybe you're using this time to catch up on some reading for your profession or your job, things you don't normally get to read. Maybe you've been preparing your garden for the summer, or maybe you're doing some of the spring cleaning and paperwork that just one never gets around to. All of this we're doing because we believe that this lockdown will come to an end and things will be different again afterwards. But it's more than that. It's more than just being ready when the lockdown ends. It's as though this lockdown is teaching us something as well at the same time, as though we are learning new things, as though we hope that things will be better when we go back from the lockdown. This lockdown is causing me to challenge the thinking I have of what I knew was correct, reminding us of some values that have seemingly been forgotten. Like, for example, the joy of caring for our neighbors, or the dignity of being cared for by our neighbors, or relearning and rediscovering what really, really matters. It's as though when we go back from lockdown, I fully expect the world to be different, and not just different, but better than the way it was before. And so, in the meantime, I'm getting ready. I couldn't help thinking that there is a bit of an analogy here between the way in which we have been preparing for life after the lockdown and the way that Christians are said to prepare themselves for life after death. I know analogies shouldn't be pushed too far. Every analogy is limited. But take a look at our reading for this Sunday, for example. The scene is Pentecost Sunday. What has happened is it's after the resurrection of Jesus, and the disciples are all gathered together, and all of a sudden the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit, descends upon them. And a crowd gathers round, and all of the people in the crowd can hear the good news of Jesus, each in his or her own language. And so the people of Jerusalem are saying, what on earth is this? We've never seen anything like this. What's going on? So Peter stands up to address the people. And his message is all about the vindication of Jesus and his message. To begin with, Peter says, Jesus' divine authority was clearly proven by the wonders and miracles that he performed amongst the people. But then he says there's more. He says to the people, you killed him. You, the people of Jerusalem, handed him over to evil men in order for him to be put to death. Now, why did they do this? They did this because they said they were effectively pronouncing their judgment on Jesus. They were saying, we don't believe his story. Here is somebody who is saying that he is speaking on behalf of God, and that makes him a blasphemer because we don't believe that he is actually speaking on behalf of God. So says Peter, who was right, you or Jesus? Well, says Peter, God raised Jesus from death because death could not hold him prisoner. In other words, God vindicated Jesus. It was Jesus, not you, who was right about what he said and what he taught. Then Peter appeals to the authority of David. And now David was the great king of Israel and the one in whom the messianic hope was placed, that another king like David would come to lead God's people into freedom. And so he says, David foretold that somebody like him, a descendant of his, would come and that this person would liberate Israel. And he says, in Jesus, David's hope has been vindicated too, especially by Jesus' resurrection. And now Peter goes on in the next sentence, the section we didn't read, but if you carry on the reading just a few verses later, Peter comes to talk about this Pentecost day itself and saying, here we have the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit has descended upon the people as Jesus promised. So now even Jesus' promises, the things he said would happen, have come true and have been vindicated. All of this, says Peter, makes Jesus Lord. In other words, it means his values triumph. The kingdom he spoke about is the very kingdom which is coming in the end. And if that is true, if at the end of the day what Jesus taught as the true values, both for this life and for the life to come, is correct, then don't you want to know what those values are? And this, says Peter, is the point of the resurrection. This is the effect that the resurrection has. It vindicates Jesus. It says what he said was true. What he said were the correct values for this life and the life to come turn out to be correct. So go back and investigate the values that Jesus taught. Go and learn what he said, because that is what really matters in the end. So here's the analogy that I see between this story and what we're going through now. If there is another or better world or reality coming after the lockdown, then we're asking ourselves, well, how should we live now? How do we prepare for that better world after lockdown? And that's precisely how Christians, this is the analogy, how Christians anticipate the coming of Christ's kingdom. It's not necessarily that everything is wonderful yet, but we're saying, here are values that Jesus taught that are values not just for now, but for the world to come. And so what do we do with that? What do we do with those values that he taught? Well, in both the lockdown and in life in general, we have a couple of choices if things are going to be better in the next reality or the time after this. The first thing we can say is, well, we're not there yet. It's not happening yet. And so what is happening now is purely meaningless. It doesn't matter what happens now. It is totally meaningless. And so we say to ourselves, well, real life will only start again once this is all over. In the meantime, why do we bother doing anything? Let's just sit and be couch potatoes and wait for this all to end. There's another way you could look at it. Another response you could have is to say, well, what happens now doesn't matter, so I'll do whatever I like. I'll treat people any way I like because I'll worry about being ready for work and answering to other authorities and doing other things at a later stage. They can't touch me now because I'm at home. I'll just do whatever I like, stay in bed as long as I like, and watch TV all day long, do nothing. But there's another way, and this is an interesting thing because it's the way that many people seem to be responding in the situation of lockdown. And that is to say, well, hang on, I can start seeing something better emerging, and I want to live by those values now already in anticipation. In other words, I'm getting myself ready. In my case, trying to get a little bit fitter than I was, because when lockdown ends, I'd like to be a fitter kind of person. And this is something which we do both now, and for afterwards. It's not just that these values are good for me now, or that they're only good for me afterwards. I'm starting to live now in anticipation of the values that I see coming and emerging in the better world that we see. And then you've got guys like this. This is Captain Tom Moore. He's an old guy who decided that this is no time for sitting around and watching what the Kardashians are up to. This is time for action. So he decided to walk around his garden 100 times before his 100th birthday. And he got people to sponsor him. And to date, when I recorded this, he'd managed to collect over £20 million for the NHS. So friends, this is Tom. Tom is not sitting back and waiting for the lockdown to end. Tom sees there's something to do, and so he does it. Tom believes in a better world after lockdown. Tom may not live to see much of that world, but he's raising funds for it anyway. Be like Tom. Right, that's me. I'm off to see how many times I can walk around my garden before dinner time. So, God bless you and cheerio.